welcome to this episode of Story and Things, a podcast where we review stories.
And we talk about things, different types of things.
I'm your host, Cheli.
And I'm your host, Yajaira. How do you feel today?
Sad.
Cheli finished this book in one day.
I did. I finished it today, and we're here with margaritas. Going to get fucking through it. But you don't know how I feel. Like, I could be indifferent. I am indifferent.
I could be indifferent too.
I don't agree or disagree with your statement.
You were literally crying, and Cheli was like, this doesn't mean anything. I'm still indifferent.
I don't really cry in front of you, do I?
This weekend has been emotional because I kind of cried too.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because you're like, can I explain that moment?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because we were both reading Malice together but separately. We were sitting together, but we were reading Malice at different points. And you just were telling me the story of Sleeping Beauty. And you were like, have you seen Maleficent? And I was like, no. You're like, oh yeah, it's really sad. And then you look away a bit. It's really sad. And I started crying. I was scared.
Oh my god, I don't know why it just suddenly hit me. I was like, wow, that movie is really good, actually.
I'm glad you love it. That was me today.
Yeah.
With Under the Whispering Door. Indifferently, though. They were indifferent tears.
Yeah.
You know.
You were just so bored that you started crying.
Yeah. So, we're going to go ahead and talk about Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. Mm-hmm. And you're going to give us a summary, and I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm going to give us this summary of the story. It's going to be pretty short. I'm going to try to keep spoilers to a minimum so that we can hella spoil afterwards. Mm-hmm. All right, so Wallace Price is the main character of our story, and he's a bit of a heartless lawyer. Mm-hmm. Just a tiny bit. He is a workaholic, so his entire existence was dedicated to his work. So, unsurprisingly, he has no friends and no family. A few days after firing an employee for making the tiniest mistake, Wallace Price dies of a heart attack, and he is witnessing his own funeral when he wakes up again. It's there when we learn that many people thought of him as an asshole, and even his ex-wife, Naomi, is there, but her eulogy is really short, really bitter, and really honest. And even the priest was like, let it out. Just let it out.
That's what God would have wanted.
Yeah, even though it was kind of rude.
Yeah.
So at that point, Wallace meets his reaper, Mei Ying, who intends on taking him to a ferryman named Hugo. And the place that is between life and death is a tea and snack shop named Kairon Treats. And here is where our main character is forced to stay because when he does attempt to flee, he walks out into the world and he starts to become dusty. Yep. Poor guy. And so he's forced to remain at the tea shop until he's ready to pass on to what's next. Meanwhile, there is a hook stuck to his chest that has a line that leads to Hugo. He's the ferryman. So he's tethered to him until he decides that it's time for him to pass on. Hugo lives at the tea shop with Mei Ying, Nelson, who is Hugo's dead grandfather, and Apollo, who is his dead dog. And our main character, Wallace, struggles with the acceptance of his death. And there is a door that leads to the afterlife that seems to speak to him. And with time, he grows closer to these characters, and he realizes that he never truly started to live until he died.
That was a very good summary.
Thank you. I try to keep it short and sweet and not give out too many spoilers.
Yeah, I think that was a very good summary. Like Yajaira said, it was spoiler-free-ish because I would rather recommend everyone go read or listen to the book first. Because we are going to spoil the fuck out of it.
And we will spoil the ending, which I think is the most important part.
Yes. Okay, so I did want to mention again that because Wallace Price died, he is in this tea and snack place along with the other characters mentioned. And I think in order to get to know the characters, we should talk about the characters and what led them to that tea and snack place. And we'll start backwards. We'll do Wallace last.
Oh, everyone is waiting for Wallace.
I know, but he can wait. He can wait.
We can all wait.
Can we talk about first the main two? Or not the main two. first, the two who've been in that house first, which is Nelson, Hugo, and Apollo. So I guess 3.
Mm-hmm.
Nelson being the grandfather of Hugo, who is the ferryman.
Mm-hmm.
But that was that their home before?
I don't think it was their home before, but it turned into his home once he took on the ferryman role.
But that was his hometown.
Yes.
Okay. We have Nelson, who is the granddad, and is 1000% emulating dad jokes. Like, his whole being is dad jokes, and mostly, like, dead jokes.
Exactly, because he's been dead for about 2 years now.
Yep.
And the reason why he decided to stay was because Hugo, the ferryman, I feel like I have to keep repeating that he's the ferryman. He lost his parents, and Nelson felt like, well, he lost me too, and I just have to stay here to make sure that he's okay.
Now to explain Hugo. Hugo is the ferryman, and when we say ferry, it's not like pixie dust, you know?
Although that's cute though.
Ferry. So like a train ride or something that is supposed to help you transition. The reason he's called a ferryman is because he's supposed to help the dead transition to the beyond. Never really says what it is, heaven or hell, no one really knows. But in his tea shop, there's 4 floors, and on the 4th floor on the ceiling is the door that leads to the beyond.
Yeah.
So he's supposed to help the ghosts get to that point.
He doesn't want to force them, though. He wants it to be their own choice, but he's there to answer any questions. And he is such a patient person because they can literally ask the dumbest question, like, what does it mean to live? It's not dumb, but it's like a really big question that not one person can answer in a sitting. And he will find something to say that's like perfect.
Yes.
He's such a good character.
But the thing is, as told by one of the characters in the story, he was always a very serious guy until this group of characters all came together and he started to smile and laugh more. But he is very empathetic. He is very dedicated to his job and really just wants to help those in need.
Yeah, and because he's an empathetic person, that's how he even came into this role to begin with.
Yeah, because he actually experienced the death of both of his parents when he was 25. It was his parents going off to date night and they just didn't come back. There was an ice sleet on the street and their car flipped over and it was an instant death.
Yeah. It was really sad.
One more character that is an easy mention is of the dog Apollo. It is Hugo's dog that passed away,
and I'm not even sure how long he's been gone.
Yeah, me neither, but he's been
gone.
Yeah.
And Hugo does mention that he tried to encourage him to go on to the beyond, but Apollo decided to stay. He wants to be there for Hugo.
Love that for him. So why don't we talk about, because we have the family dynamic, we have the ferryman, which is Hugo. But a worker that works under the ferryman would be the Reaper, which in this story is Mei Ying, which she goes by Mei.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about Mei?
So Mei is an interesting character because I didn't know I could not understand what it meant to be a Reaper. I didn't understand, was she like half ghost?
Yeah.
Was she half human? Because
Are you asking me?
Yes.
She was half and half. So she didn't die, but because she had that sensitivity to seeing ghosts, they hired her for that. From what I understood. Because she still has contact with her family.
Right.
Which means she didn't die.
Exactly. And I'm not sure how long she's been in this role, but Wallace was her first case on her own because before that she was shadowing somebody else. And I just really appreciated her character because she was such a, like, funny in a different way from Nelson.
Yeah.
Funny because she's so headstrong.
Blunt.
And, I mean, there's other characters that come into play that she's not, like, afraid of them.
Yes. I love that so much. Why don't we talk about Wallace?
Wally Wallace?
Wallace is our main character who kicked the bucket because he had a mimiski.
And... can I just ask you?
He had a heart attack, by the way.
I'm not laughing because of that. The way that this story started was so funny. I was completely hooked because it starts off with him working, and he's talking to one of his employees.
Yeah.
Because he's a lawyer, and
they work under him.
It's a paralegal, and her name's Patricia. And she's just, like, going off about things that are happening in her...
My husband never touches me anymore.
And he's just like, okay, did not ask this detail. And then she's going off about other things, like her daughter has, like, a belly button piercing, and she doesn't know what to do about it.
And her son wants the wedding to be catered by Applebee's.
Of all places, Applebee's. And so she's letting it all out for him. Mm-hmm. And then he's like, that's great, but you're fired.
And she was like, oh, this is a joke, right? And he's like, no.
Ashton Kutcher, where are you?
I know. But he was so fucking, like...
heartless.
Yeah, but I thought it was funny because the way that they described, like, his feeling before his death was like, oh, man, I should get a Tums or something. That chili is not sitting right. And apparently, his last words...
Goddamn chili. He literally said goddamn chili.
When chili kills you. That's so funny.
Poor guy.
But he is led to the tea and snack shop by May the Reaper, because he needs to be there in order to transition to the beyond.
Yeah.
And he is not that nice and not really taking it well that he's dead.
No, but it's different from what Hugo is used to, because Wallace tells him, I just have so much to do. I have so many clients. I have paperwork up the ass. Like, I just have so much to do. And Hugo's like, so because of work and not because of family.
Or friends or a loved one, you know.
He's just like, I don't have time for that.
No. And it's sad, too, because it hit Wallace more so when he went to his own funeral. Mm-hmm. And he saw that no one cared for him. Only 5 people went, and 3 of them were like law firm people that he worked with that all hated him, his ex-wife, and May, who was there to pick him up. Mm-hmm. So he's dealing with so much emotion with, okay, what was the point in any of this? Why did I even care so much? Like, fuck. Way to put things in freaking perspective right now.
Yeah.
Seeing it from the outside. But through the story, he grows fond of all the characters, and he becomes very complex in his character. Okay, so I have discussion points. Mm-hmm. Is it okay if I just start going through them? I tried to put them in the order of the story so that at the end, we can talk about the ending.
Okay.
And just to mention again, Yajaira and I don't know how we feel about this, but I will mention that I don't know if you like this story, so don't look at me.
I don't want to talk about anything previous from this story. I don't want to take away from this story. But remember I said that it was kind of like Midnight Library? Mm-hmm. Did you get that vibe?
I didn't.
It's very different.
It's very different. When you said it was like Midnight Library, I know you didn't hate Midnight Library, but I was like, oh no, she fucking hates it.
I just don't really... Oh, you know what? I'm going to save it. You know what?
Okay.
I'm going to save it. I'm going to save that thought for later.
Oh my god. Siri. Oh my god. I know.
Oh my god.
She's here. So I tried looking up tropes for this story, and all that came up was misanthropic character. And I didn't know what misanthropic meant. So I looked it up, and it's someone who dislikes humankind and avoids human society.
Oh my god.
Is that a trope people look for?
I don't think so. Or maybe.
Just like
that's Wallace.
Character. Well, if you think about it, like the Heathers, the musical The Heathers, the main guy, everyone loves him because he's so cynical and hates the world. And it's like, oh my gosh, JD.
Well, when people are into angst, then that makes sense.
Yeah, it does kind of make sense. So we do give trigger warnings at the beginning of our episodes, but just want to mention right now also trigger warning with grief and loss.
Yeah.
This story has a lot of layers, so I'm going to peel it until we get to the middle of the onion like Shrek.
Until we get to the core.
Okay, so first question I want to ask you is, because this story is about grief, loss, and moving on, how do you feel about the setting being in a tea shop?
Well, okay, let me actually find that quote that he kept saying.
Okay, you want me to sing while you're doing it?
Yeah, go.
Ooh.
Why do you always do Hannah Moon?
It's so
So at first I really didn't understand, but Hugo's character really loved tea because he thought that it would bring people together. But he didn't come up with that. He got it from somebody else whose name I can't remember.
Yes.
And so when Wallace first arrives, there is like a plaque somewhere in the tea shop that says, the first time you share tea, you're a stranger. The second time you share tea, you're an honored guest. The third time you share tea, you become family.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really cute quote. It didn't hit me at first because I was like, I don't really drink a whole lot of tea, but I respect it. It. But I do agree that it was touching to see how Hugo would always welcome his guests with tea, and he always knew what type of tea would trigger a pleasant memory for them.
Yeah.
I thought that was really beautiful.
I did too. I think the setting of it being in a tea shop is also very calming, which grief and loss is such a scary and unknown feeling. Mm-hmm. So to just be brought back to your childhood with a drink is really sweet.
Yeah.
And even when Wallace, who was an asshole at the beginning, drank his first tea, he was taken back to a memory of like
his mom.
And oh my God, that's so sweet. There was even a moment where Wallace was seeing Hugo get ready for someone else who was going to come in. And he was like, okay, I think it's going to be this one. It's going to be this one. It tastes bitter, but there's a little sweetness behind it. And Wallace drinks it and is like, the fuck is this? This sucks.
This tea is your worst tea. Because it was really bitter, like you said, and it was like a Chinese healing tea.
Yeah.
Which I can't even remember. It was Alan, right? Did he even drink the tea?
Alan did drink it, but he was being kind of about it.
Yeah.
But then, like, another character drinks his tea and is very, like, touched. Because he's thinking of the memory of, like, his boyfriend.
Because it smells like, or it tastes like oranges.
Yeah.
And they would hang out under an orange tree.
I thought that the setting was very fitting to the type of story it was.
Yeah, I agree.
So throughout the story, we're handling grief through kind of the 5 stages of grief.
Oh my God. And he's bouncing around.
He's bouncing around because they do mention that everyone grieves differently. Mm-hmm. You're not going to go through the 5 stages like everyone else.
Not in order, and it doesn't even have to be all 5.
Mm-hmm. But in general, how did you think this story handled grief?
I thought it did a really good job. I mean, it was really sad because Wallace in the beginning was stuck in denial for a minute.
Yeah.
And it was really sad because even Hugo had to tell him, oh, pick up this cup or pick up this, pick up that. And he could do it. But then when Hugo would mention, well, you're dead, and then he couldn't do it anymore because his brain rewired and he started to remember, oh yeah, I'm dead.
So I can't do anything.
So I can't actually do that.
Mm-hmm. They always say, like, because you expect it, you'll be like that. So you have to unexpect it.
Yeah, they kept repeating that.
And Wallace, who is so fucking a hard ass, is like, you can't just unexpect something, Nelson.
Right. He's so funny because in many moments in the story, his lawyer side comes out. Yeah. And it's like, God, how can I forget that you're a lawyer?
There was one part where it was like, you know what? This lady, that's sexual harassment. I'm going to sue. I'll do the paperwork. Oh, wait. I'm dead. Okay, you know what? We'll figure it out.
He's like, I'll have someone else do the paperwork.
But can I say, without giving too much away, because I'm indifferent, can I say that with this book, I did really like the way grief was handled in this book, because I've been through the death of a family member, but the ending did not sit well with me.
We're already at the ending?
Yeah, we're moving towards the ending. I don't want to get too into it.
Okay.
But with the way that the book was handling grief, it made it seem that no matter what, at the end of the day, everything dies. I did not like how it handled it at the very end. Because as someone who has dealt with grief, and I feel like that's why it hit me a lot more.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have in any other sense, but with loss, whatever is alive is going to die eventually. And I don't want to get too dark, but that's kind of the entire purpose of this book. Mostly with other characters, other ghosts that end up
having to accept that they're gone.
Yes, like Alan, who was a ghost that was murdered and never truly accepted it and was kind of just, instead of going through the transition to the beyond, ended up just being forced to go there because he was kind of a lost cause.
And
he was becoming malicious.
And he was becoming really angry, which makes sense. And they do mention as well that souls that were murdered handle it very differently because, it's not like their body just slowly started to, well, not decay. What's the word I'm looking for? So slowly started to reach its end. Mm-hmm. So Alan was just really angry. Yes. And so because he was causing so much trouble, because remember, ghosts that aren't accepting their death can move things. So he was like flinging shit around when guests were there because at the tea shop, they still open for normal business hours.
Yep. And there was one person who was a regular who would go into the tea shop who was mourning the death of her daughter.
Yeah.
And Alan was like, oh, she's freaking susceptible to me. I'm going to try calling her name, and fucked her up by doing that. But I thought that was an interesting way to paint grief, only because one way that people grieve is through anger. Mm-hmm. And then we had another character whose name was Cameron, and he actually was interesting because he was a ghost before Wallace, but because of how sad he was, he ended up becoming something called a husk. Mm-hmm. And basically what a husk is just a walking zombie.
Yeah, so as I mentioned in the summary, when Wallace tried to escape, he was turning dusty. So Cameron actually wasn't saved, like he didn't come back or anything. So the further that he went, that he just became, like you said, a walking zombie. So what they believed was that, oh, he's a lost cause now. Mm-hmm. We can't do anything about him. We can't lead him to the beyond now. So he's just stuck there now. Because that was his choice.
Yes, but eventually Wallace does find out a way to get to him and to try to understand his pain and just help him know that, you have to move on. You can't just live like this. And I thought that was another good way to show grief, that people do deal with it with immense sadness until they're kind of pulled out of it through a friend or through someone. Mm-hmm. And then there was another form of grief. Oh, the other form of grief was through the person I just mentioned that went to the tea shop often. Her name was Nancy. Mm-hmm. And she lost her daughter, Leia, which, by the way, Leia's ghost was with Hugo at one point to help transition. Mm-hmm. And because of certain circumstances with another Reaper that used to work with Hugo, who was really forceful and forced this little girl to go to the beyond, there's a lot of trauma in Nancy because of that, because she feels like Leia has to be somewhere here. Mm-hmm. I don't know what you did to her, but you did something to her. So I thought that was interesting because another form of grief is not being able to let go or not accepting it.
Right.
And this is a weird thing to bring up, but do you remember I had heard once online about someone who said, in order to deal with death, I just don't consider people dead.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
And it's, if you're dead, I'm just gonna think of you as you're just gone somewhere.
You're just like on vacation.
Oh, that is the worst type of grief.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Because you're in denial. You're not accepting that this person has passed on.
And that can fuck you up a lot.
Because one day you're gonna realize, I can never see this person again. Oh, and even if this person was on vacation, you can't text them, you can't call them.
No. So. You can't. And, it's just, it's a point of grief that some people go through until you reach a point where, okay, I can finally move on. Which thankfully Nancy does go through, thanks to freaking Wallace and Hugo and May and Nelson. But through all of them, he was kind of there, but not really. Uh-huh. But through all of them, she was able to, go through this because of their support of letting her know that your daughter's in a good place. You told her to go to the moon, to go to the stars, see if the moon's made of cheese. You told her to go, and she went.
Yeah.
And that was really sweet, because that is what some people say to others when they're grieving.
In terms of grief, I felt a certain type of way with Cameron's ghost and how that situation was handled, because he became a husk and nobody really understood what that meant. Mm-hmm. So when Wallace was near him at one point, the husk came up to him and touched him. Yeah. And that's when he started to see like his own visions or his own memories. And I think Cameron was telling him, I'm still here, I'm still here. And Wallace was just like, oh my God, he's actually a person. He's not just some walking zombie. He actually is sentient. He has feelings. He has thoughts. And somebody that we didn't mention is the manager. Oh. So the manager is, I guess, a god, but not really. Even he doesn't really want to accept that title. But he does manage over Hugo and May. And so when they reach out to the manager, I think, was it after Alan? Like, was that, because the manager...
That was the first.
Right, because the manager intervened with Alan because Alan was the one that was murdered. And he was the one who just did not want to accept it. He wanted to wreak havoc. And so the manager came in and he was like, you know what? I'm going to deal with this. And he grabbed him and he took him to the door and he was like, you know what? He's just too much. He's too much. So with Cameron, Wallace asked the manager, well, how come there's all these other husks and that you don't help? Like we don't do anything about them. We just kind of leave them there. And that's when we start to realize, oh, wait, the manager doesn't actually know everything.
Yeah.
Because Wallace tries to convince him, like, well, I mean, maybe we can help them out, do something, do something for them. And the manager is depicted as like a little boy with flowers in his hair, which is like an interesting image.
Yeah.
So at that point, the manager's like, you know what, Wallace, you've been here too long. You've been here for like 2 months. And I know Nelson and Apollo have been here for years, but they don't do anything.
Yeah.
They don't do anything that ruins my day.
And then here's you causing disruptions to Hugo.
Exactly. Oh, because Hugo is now distracted because Hugo and Wallace have become friends and a little bit more than friends, but not really, just a little bit. And so Hugo isn't himself anymore. And so the manager is like, you know what? I'm going to give you a week. Because I'm so kind and I'm so nice, I'm going to give you a week. And then I'm going to, send you to the door. You're going to go. Mm-hmm. Never to be remembered again or whatever he said. And that pretty much changed. How do I say this? I guess Wallace was becoming comfortable in this spot in the tea shop. And it changed how urgent he started to feel, because now he started to realize, oh, well, now I gotta, fix things that I've done. I kind of have to tell Hugo how I feel, I guess.
Can I mention, isn't it interesting that because Wallace had such a crappy life before, he's feeling grief for his life after death.
Exactly.
Like this life that he's formed.
Yeah.
And he's going through the stages of grief. Mm-hmm. All of them.
Yeah, because he starts to realize, like, damn, I didn't actually have anything important. Because he did love his ex-wife, but when they were going through the divorce, he didn't really allow himself to feel bad about it. He was just like, you know what? I'm too busy working, so I'm just gonna ignore that.
Yep.
Which is really sad.
So before we talk about more in depth with the relationships with Wallace, I do want to mention, connecting it back to how I feel about how this story depicted grief, I do not like how they depicted it through Wallace. Because I was so down for him going through basically every point you would through life in those 7 days. So he is helping people without expecting anything in return. He's forming deep relationships with people and accepting that, you know what, I'm not going to be here forever, but whatever you did in life has changed me and I'm so proud of you. Yeah. And that is what made me emotional. That's what made me cry.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. It was really sad.
I did not cry after it was revealed that he was going to live again.
Yeah.
Because the manager, the little baby boy with flowers in his hair, was like, you know what? Because you solved that whole husk problem, and they did try to convince him too. They were like, you can be a reaper now, and you'll be alive like May. You can't go back to your old life. You got to stay here, and you got to change your name and everything, and never see anyone again. But you can live again and happily ever after.
Right. Not in those words particularly.
No, exactly. But I did not like that. I was so thrown off. And, it kind of made me angry for those who have been through grief. Because it's like, wow, if it was that easy, then why couldn't a loved one do that? And if other people come, is Wallace ever going to bring up like, oh, well, I'm alive? You know, like,
Well,
you're
like,
not, but I am.
Well, it's like with May, he'd have to deal with it the same way that she does.
Yeah, exactly. It just threw me off because of how well I thought this author executed grief through all the other characters.
Mm-hmm.
It just felt kind of off for me that Wallace got to live.
That he got to live. I respect that. But I also disrespect that. So, what I really appreciated about this book was, like we've already said, the different types of grief that was shown. And we didn't say it, but trigger warning, Cameron was really, really sad because he lost his boyfriend or husband. I think it was boyfriend.
His boyfriend.
And so he was so sad that he actually died by suicide.
Yes.
And just seeing the way that people handle their afterlife with different ways of how they actually passed was interesting. With Wallace, I did get a little bit, not upset, but I started to feel a little bit sad that he was like floating. You remember that part where he was floating because the manager was like, all right, bitch, it's time. Your week is up. And so he starts floating, but...
away because the hook that he had connected to him, he had given to Cameron to bring him back from being a husk. So he's floating away to the door.
Because remember, the hook in his chest is what tethers him down.
Yes.
The part that bothered me about that was... I guess I wouldn't have minded him staying alive. I just wish that it would have been shown a little bit differently. But I don't know how I would have preferred it, which is weird. The thing about Wallace was that he never actually got to live, though, which is why I kind of understand why the author decided to give this character a second chance.
Mm-hmm.
Because he didn't realize what it meant to be alive until he started to fall in love with Hugo and then become friends with everybody else in this tea shop.
Yeah.
And you know, the line right here says death is only their beginning. So there being Hugo and Wallace.
Okay. Well, to connect that to my next question and to talk about more the relationships in this story that I fucking love. I'm indifferent for. Sorry.
Love. Excuse me.
So Wallace went through a lot of development in this story, and a lot of changes in his personality happened because of it. What were the points that helped him with his character growth, and how did you feel about those points?
So there's one that sticks out to me. I think this was like the major one that showed how much his character had changed, because remember, he was a hard
asshole.
The one that I'm thinking about was when Desdemona showed up to the tea shop and she was pretending to be this like clairvoyance, and she's like, I'm gonna speak to all the spirits here. And so Wallace and Nelson look at each other and they're like, you know what, we should fuck up her day.
And Hugo's like, no, you're not. And he's like, it's too late.
I'm already there.
Nelson, hold my fucking hair. I'm going.
And Nelson at first is like, I mean, should we? Okay. But the reason why he did it was because May really did not like Desdemona because of Nancy, correct?
Yes.
Because she was giving Nancy hope about her daughter Leia. Mm-hmm. But anyway, unrelated to this moment. So then Desdemona pulls out a Ouija board and Wallace starts to mess with it.
No, it was a plume. She usually did the Ouija board, but it was writing.
Oh, yeah. Because of the autocorrect.
Yeah.
So she did a little like pen and paper and she started asking the spirit questions. And how did it start off?
It was like, is there a spirit here? Say something. And the first thing it says is like, hi. Oh my God, are you guys getting it?
It's like so basic. Hi.
Wallace over here fucking sweating because it's hard to do. And he ends up writing like, because he wants to scare Desdemona. Mm-hmm. Because she's a YouTuber. Yeah. So she does this for money. And she calls it like, oh, sexy ghosts.
Hunting,
encounters or whatever. And it's funny because she asks the spirits, how did you die? What happened? Who murdered you? And then Wallace is like, Desdemona.
Yeah, he's like, oh no, because she asked who killed you, and then it's like Desdemona, and he's like, that's not right, I never killed no one.
And then he just starts saying like, I'm a demon and I'm gonna eat your diver. And Nelson is like, what the fuck?
Yeah, diver?
Like, it's hard, Nelson. Okay, never mind. Liver. Sorry, stupid autocorrect.
That part was so funny. And then I love that Desdemona just took it face value.
It's like, oh, duh.
Autocorrect.
Duh.
Yeah. Even the ghosts have to deal with this shit.
But the reason that was such a big character point for Wallace is because he's been a hard ass.
And he's been so miserable this entire time. So when they get away from Desdemona, he just starts laughing so hard. And Hugo and the rest are just staring at him like, oh,
in awe.
Oh my God, he's laughing.
And then I think that's the point where May, correct me if I'm wrong, but where May is like, I'm gonna fucking hug you now.
Mm-hmm.
And they have their first hug.
Yeah.
And it's so, well, their first, like, I guess,
like real hug.
And it was really sweet.
Yeah.
Oh,
because remember, May is a Reaper, so she can touch him, but Hugo can't touch him.
One thing I want to mention, just so that we can go to the second point of where he's growing as a character, he did do that to Desdemona for May. But also, Desdemona kept throwing little, flirts.
Oh, yeah, she kept flirting with Hugo.
And this was the point where it's revealed that Hugo and Wallace have been having, late night conversations about everything and nothing. Mm-hmm. And there's even points where Hugo's like, well, I'm talking to you as a friend. It's good to have a friend. And, it means a lot to him. So when he hears that Desdemona has been flirting with Hugo, he's like, it doesn't bother me. Why would that bother me? Why would that bother me?
It doesn't bother me, but I'm going to go fuck up her day. I'm going to go fuck up her video.
Love that. I love that.
I also love that moment. I'm sorry. I know that this is, not even in order. But there's a moment where Hugo has to go talk to Cameron. And he apologizes to Wallace. He's like, I'm so sorry. We're not going to be able to have our talk tonight. I have to stay with Cameron. And Wallace is like, it's okay.
No, it's fine. No, he needs it more.
It's whatever.
I didn't pull out Scrabble, but if I did, I'll just put it back. No, but the second point where his character is growing that I thought was very sweet was when Wallace and Hugo were having one of their late night talks. And Hugo just mentions, we can be friends now. There's nothing stopping us. And they talk to each other as if they're first meeting. Like, hi. No, not yet. Because Hugo says, I'm Hugo Freeman, and it's nice to meet you. I think we should be friends. And they're going I can't. Or Wallace says, I can't shake your hand. But instead, even though they can't touch, they both kind of just... hover over each other. And it's one of the first times that Wallace's heart is his heart of ice is melting away.
His heart of ice?
Yeah.
He's dead.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. But I thought that was really sweet.
Yeah. I love that part. Because they can't touch each other, but it's like they're emulating it anyway.
After a while, before Cameron or Alan get there, Wallace starts to develop feelings for Hugo. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Through the entire story, I kept making little notes. And I was like, is this going to be a gay ghost story?
Gay ghost story?
How are they going to... Wait, how are they...
How does that work?
Intriguing. So, the part that was so fucking beautiful was when they were both talking. And there was just a moment where Wallace is like, okay, no backing out. I'm just going to ask him. And he says... if things were different and I was alive and I came here, would you, and Hugo's walking away because he's already leaving from their past conversation and Wallace feels embarrassed, but Hugo, without looking at him, just says yes.
And not even finishing his question, he's like, 100%, yes.
And there's just this lingering thing between them throughout the entire story past that point where it's like they both know how they feel, but they're not gonna say it in order to put it in existence because it's such a sad situation. Thing.
Yeah, it was really sad.
Would you consider this a slow burn?
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah.
right? Because
nothing happens until the end.
I didn't want to assume they were gonna be together because I didn't want to break my heart.
No, me too. I was like, you know what? I'm not even gonna get my hopes up, even though this shit cute. I don't want to get my hopes up.
Yep.
I was so ready.
And
I was so ready emotionally.
Like you said, there's that point where Cameron is there too, when even Hugo is like, we can't have our late night talks. But he does mention it's cut off, but he's like, but if you want, we can talk after. Like, it's like, no, I get it.
It's like, I mean, I'm not going to go to sleep. I can't go to sleep, so, you know.
There's even a part where a health inspector comes over and also has the hots for Hugo.
Oh, yeah, because Hugo's just really handsome.
Yeah, he is. And it's funny because as soon as he comes and he makes like a, kind of like a flirt, a move towards Hugo, freaking Wallace is like, I fucking hate this man. Oh my god, punch him in the nuts. And he's like, I can't do that. But he's like talking to the health inspector. He's like, can't do what? Like, who are you talking to?
The health inspector's just like, who are you talking to? Hello? He's like, that's not what I said. I said, are there still rats in the building?
Yeah, come on. Did you listen? There was one where it was like, we can't, I forget how he says it, but he basically says a statement where like, we can't hurt him. And he's like, what did you say? I said that I think I'm going to add burrito bowls to the menu.
Oh, yeah. Well, the health inspector asks him to clarify what he just said. Yeah. He was talking to Wallace or Nelson. And he's like, oh my God. Remember, no one else can see the ghosts.
So the final point where I think Walson. Whoa.
That's not even
a weird chip.
That's not even the right
Nelson and Wallace. Okay. The next point where I thought Wallace's character was just completely became who he was at the end of the story was after he realized, after talking to the manager, that he only had 7 days left. There were several moments where he had very heart-to-heart interactions with other characters. Mm-hmm. The first was when he denied to tell anyone what was going on. Mm-hmm. And he is angry and Hugo sees this and Hugo's like, we need to go outside. Let's go outside.
Oh, I love that part.
And so they go outside and Hugo asks him to scream. Mm-hmm. And Wallace is a little embarrassed, like, I'm not gonna scream.
I'm not gonna scream. What, you think I am crazy?
So then Hugo screams and he's like, now you try. And Wallace goes all out and he feels every emotion about, mistakes that he's made in his life, about regrets of having to leave this new family that he created.
Yeah.
And then ends up admitting to Hugo what the manager told him. And Hugo is so fucking mad. Mm-hmm. And he's like going around the tea shop just yelling, manager, you have to come out. We need to talk.
Yeah. Because he thinks that, well, at least I'm owed a conversation.
Yeah.
And he keeps calling for him, but the manager does not show up.
So then Wallace becomes a little reflective and he's like, I know what you're trying to do, but isn't this the whole point? Like,
oh, yeah. And that's basically when he repeats the line, because when he first arrived there, Hugo would spill out a whole bunch of philosophy at him. And one of the things he said was, a river flows only one way, which we can assume means like life only goes one way, so you can't backtrack.
Yeah.
And so at this point now, Hugo is the one who is dealing with heartbreak.
And wanting to backtrack and wanting to keep it like this.
Exactly. So then Wallace is kind of the one who has to comfort him, and he tells him, a river only flows one way. And Hugo's like, God damn it, don't use my words against me.
But Wallace knows that he has a limited amount of time with those that he loves.
Yeah.
And he uses this time to
undo his wrongs.
So one of the things he does is he helps one of the regulars get over the death of the daughter.
The one that you mentioned, yeah.
Yeah. Just because he feels like no one should live with that grief for so long. And it's a very touching moment because Nancy finally has closure for her daughter. Mm-hmm. And it's so sweet. It's so sweet that Wallace did that because that's not like beginning Wallace who died of Cheli. That's not that Wallace anymore.
Right.
Another one is
when he had Hugo call his ex-wife.
Naomi?
No, Naomi?
Naomi, okay.
So Hugo calls Naomi and he's trying to have this conversation with her, but she seems like she's in a rush. She's like, who is this? And he says, is this Naomi? And I knew Wallace, and she's like, sorry to tell you, but he's already dead. And if you're a client, you can call the office, whatever. And he's like, no, I just wanted to tell you that he talked about you with me. And I just wanted you to know that he really cared for you. And he even mentioned a memory of their wedding. And she's completely taken aback. And she's like, wait, you knew Wallace? Wallace? He's like, yeah, he came into my tea shop. Tea? He doesn't even like tea. I've never seen him drink tea. Yeah. When he told her the memory of the wedding, then she starts to believe that he actually knew Wallace.
And she does end up getting emotional.
She does get really emotional, but at the same time, she's kind of like, well, he's gone now, so thank you.
Thank you for calling.
Thank you, but why did you call me? This is so random.
But also really cute, because even Naomi, after, being in divorce from Wallace, is like, did you love him? To like Hugo, and Hugo's like, what? And it's funny because Wallace is in the background, like, hang up, like, stop the conversation. And
no, she asks, were you just his friend? Because you sound like his type.
Yeah.
And Hugo didn't even know that he would be his type. So he's just like, what? What do you mean?
What do you mean by that?
And he's like, yeah, you have the same cadence that he would always swoon over. And Wallace in the back, like, I do not swoon. And then that's when Naomi asks him, did you love him? And yeah.
But he clarifies, just friends, nothing else, just friends.
Just besties, and that's it.
So then another moment, getting close to the last one, another moment that Wallace has during this, last 7 days is he takes a day off from the tea shop and he's like, I'm going to steal Hugo and we're just going to ride on his fucking moped. Just ride. And then May's like, already into that idea. This, picturing it, you two, yes. Go off, I'll take care of the tea shop. Mm-hmm. And they go far away. And while they're going far away, Wallace starts to feel himself turn into, is it dust?
Dust.
Turn into dust. But instead of being scared of it, he feels very calm with what's going on.
Yeah, he's starting to accept it.
And in this moment, they find Cameron, who we already mentioned. Wallace helps. Mm-hmm. But I did want to mention one part that fucking scared me. Okay. When they were driving the moped and they almost crashed. Mm-hmm. I was really scared that the direction of this book was going to change to Hugo dying.
I didn't even think about that.
I was so fucking scared because I would not be down with that at all. That would have been such a dumb, because that feels like, death is the answer type of thing.
Death is actually heaven. And death is your absolution.
Yeah, love that.
This is it for you guys.
But at this moment, this is where acceptance starts to hit Hugo. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, they help Cameron, and Cameron ends up coming back from being a husk and is now living with them in the tea shop. Mm-hmm. And this is where Cameron and Hugo start to hang out more, and Wallace is like, it's okay. It's okay.
I mean, I'm only here for like 3 more days, but like,
whatever. Who's counting, right?
Who's counting? I mean,
wait, that counter I put up there? No one saw it?
Yeah. Our time is kind of limited, Hugo, so after you're done, meet me in the back.
But we do see Cameron decide to go to the Beyond.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, at that point, he was already ready. He was like,
ready.
I've allowed my boyfriend to wait long enough. It's time for me to go.
And it was a very sweet, bittersweet moment because it never reveals what the Beyond is, and I will talk about that later. It never reveals what the Beyond is, but it reveals that it's good. Yeah. Whatever's on the other side is good. It's always painted with, like, when you get close to it, you hear music and it gets louder
and the birds,
calling you.
And it's very peaceful. Mm-hmm. And then some people, when they look through the door, they'll call out someone that they love.
Yep.
In a way that they're seeing them.
And at this moment where Cameron leaves, it kind of starts to hit everyone that Wallace is leaving next. And it's soon. So then everyone is super sad. On the last day, Hugo's like, I want to show you something. And they walk to Hugo's room, which, by the way, Wallace has never seen. Mm-hmm. And in
the 2 months there, he's never seen it.
Kind of rude, Just have me sleep on the floor. I couldn't even get on a fucking chair.
Well, I mean, he is dead, so.
Oh, sorry.
Spoiler alert.
And they're in Hugo's room, and Wallace is so, like, fascinated with, like, the little memories that he can piece together through the things that are hung up in Wallace's room, or in Hugo's room, like photographs and stuff.
Yeah.
But they lay down together, not really, because Wallace teared off his hook, so he's kind of floating. But they go to the bed, and they have a moment where they start to reenact what life would have been like.
Well, before they reenact it.
Go ahead, because I know I missed the part.
It's really sad because the entire time they've been dancing around how they genuinely feel for one another. We know, and they know, but they've never actually explicitly said it.
Yeah.
And so it's finally in this moment where Hugo just lets out the vulnerability. He's just like, I wish that I could ask you to stay. Like, I wish that you didn't have to go. And I think at this point he was like really tired, right?
He was really tired, so he was falling asleep, but he
and then
was sad.
And it's really sad because Hugo has always been this very patient person, and he always knows what to say, especially with, the people that have to pass. And he says, with you, I never know what to say. Like, I don't want you to go. I wish you could stay. And when he says, I don't want you to go, that's when it hits Wallace. And Wallace is like, he's like, well, I wish that I could.
And he keeps repeating, and it's not the only time. He keeps telling Hugo, you better not forget me.
Yeah, he keeps saying it because he's scared. Because he even tells him, you're the only person that has positive
views of me.
Yeah, or memories, positive memories of me. So and please don't forget
want me
me.
To go.
Yeah.
And it's really sad because before Hugo falls asleep, he's talking to Wallace, and they make a little scenario that they act out where they meet when they're both alive, and it's Wallace coming to the tea shop being fucking stupid, like, give me something. I found this place, thought I'd give it a try. I fucking hate tea though. And so it's just them meeting, them talking to each other.
And they're reenacting it, but not really. It's just like a conversation.
Yeah. And it's so sad because you can tell that they both love each other at this point. And there's a quote that I wanted to read. When Hugo is about to fall asleep, when his eyes are growing heavy, it says, he fought it, eyes blinking slowly, but he'd already lost. I think it'd be nice, he said, words slurring slightly. If you came here, if you stayed, we'd drink tea and talk, and one day I would tell you that I loved you, that I couldn't imagine my life without you. You made me want more than I ever thought I could have. Such a silly dream. And then he falls asleep.
Yeah. And then Wallace responds with basically saying that he loves him too.
I love you too.
In that same moment, they also mention that saying that's in the tea shop. The first time you drink tea, you're a stranger. Second time, you're a guest. Third time, you're family. But at this point, he had already drinking like 4 cups. Yeah. So he's like, where are we? And so Hugo tells him, you're family.
Yeah.
So.
Forever and ever.
Forever.
Oh my gosh, that was all about Wallace's character growth.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to say about it because the development of his character was done really well.
Yes, I think so too. So to get to the very end, just to mention it, when Wallace knows he's going to leave, the manager comes in and is like, hey y'all, as a little fucking boy. And by the way, all of his shirts are like stupid jokes.
Yeah.
So one of them was,
if you think I'm handsome, you should see my ass.
Yeah.
Or if you think I'm pretty, you should see my ass.
Yeah, so the manager comes in and they're all really sad, but they try to like talk to him and say, with all this husks
situation.
Like, wouldn't it be nice if we save them? Like, wouldn't that be nice? And he's like, you guys are trying to convince me? It's interesting that you're bargaining this far into you leaving.
Yeah, because he even brings up, like, really bargaining at this stage?
Yeah.
How long have you been here? And you're still bargaining?
But at the very end, Wallace starts to float up towards the door. And it's so sad because he knows he doesn't have time anymore. And he just looks at everyone and says, I love you all.
Thank you for making my death worth it.
And he floats up, and you can hear all of them calling for him.
Yeah, and they try to hold him down, too.
Oh, yeah, because
really
it's first,
sad.
it's like
Nelson first.
Nelson, and then May is holding on to Nelson's leg, and then Hugo is holding on to May, so they're all like...
Well, he can't hold her, because she...
Oh, you're right.
She's touching a ghost, so he can't touch May.
So Hugo is the one that calls out, and then they're all trying to grab him. And at the very end, Nelson is up there with Wallace at the door, and he's like covering his face because it's such an emotional thing that's about to happen. Mm-hmm. But at the very last moment, the manager's like, I've had such a boring life doing the same thing all the time that I'm going to give you a shot. Mm-hmm. Think of this as a job interview. You had such a fucking good-ass resume that I think this is your shot to be a fucking Reaper, bitch.
But he's like, oh, your resume? I have it right here. It's really long, really extensive, really boring.
Yeah.
He's like, and you're the only candidate.
And everyone's confused because everyone's made it to the 4th floor where the door is. And when the manager is saying this, we see Wallace, because he's been floating this whole time without his chain. He goes back to the floor and is grounded. Mm-hmm. And everyone's confused, but May brings up, like, Hugo, you're touching Wallace.
Mm-hmm. But
okay, go ahead.
right before that moment, Wallace does notice that he feels a beating again in his chest. And he's like, what the fuck? Hello?
And then he comes back down. And he is grounded. It catches him by surprise. And May notices
that Hugo's touching Wallace.
My favorite thing about the scene is that the first moment that Hugo realizes that Wallace can be touched, he kisses him.
He wastes no time. He's like, okay, come here. And they kiss. And it's so sweet. It's really sweet. It's a good kiss.
And the manager's like, mid-job interview here.
This is really unprofessional, okay?
And it's funny because now that Wallace is a Reaper, it's like, oh my gosh, I get to stay here. Hell yeah. But the manager's like, okay, we'll go over the freaking technicalities later because I know as humans, you gotta do your fucking love thing. Whatever you're talking about.
That was so funny. He was like, God, please get it out of your chest because I don't want to come back and see anything, okay? Get it out of your system.
It's so funny.
And he even makes, like, hand gestures, and Wallace is like, I never wanted to see a little boy do that ever again.
And remind me if I'm wrong, at that point, they do go through the whole, hi, I'm Hugo.
Well, they would do that constantly. Like, they would be like, hi.
But they do it again at the end, right?
Yeah, they do. And it's so funny because the manager's like, you can't go back to your life. You're stuck here, okay? You're going to be stuck here. And he's like, I don't want to be anywhere else. There's nowhere else I want to be.
So at the end of the story, the epilogue, we see that Wallace, because his name was Wallace Price, now it's Wallace Reed. Mm-hmm. And he is living at the tea shop. He did want to move out because he felt like he was, intruding. And he was like, I can get an apartment nearby. Mm-hmm. And Hugo's like, no.
Apartment nearby? Hello?
Not near enough.
When you slept in my bed?
Really? He's like, no, I kind of float. Okay, whatever.
I was floating over the bed.
But it's cute. I want to mention one part. I think it was at this part where Wallace was like talking to May because May was the one who got him a fake ID and fake social security through his mom. He was like, yeah, we said Reed because you look like a Reed because you're so skinny and tall. But that moment, Wallace is like, oh, I never asked you. What's your last name? Mm-hmm. And she says Freeman, which is the last name of Hugo because she's part of the family. But then Nelson makes a little comment. He's like, oh, but you're going to be a Freeman soon.
Yeah. He's like, you're already on your way there.
But remember, too, Nelson's character, the only reason he was here was to watch over Hugo until he knew he was happy and was, doing his own thing in life that wouldn't cause any worry for him. Mm-hmm. And when he sees that him and Wallace are happy, he's like, I think I'm ready to go.
Yeah. He's like, I've been here long enough. 2 years. I've overstayed my welcome. I'm going to go.
And he goes through the door, looks really excited, happy. And Apollo
goes with him.
Oh, Apollo the dog does go with him too. Mm-hmm. Gosh.
The end.
Is that the end of the story?
Uh-huh.
Oh, and at the end, it's just them like, new assignment. Okay, Reaper, you're gonna be going under, or you're going to be shadowing May, but let's fucking do this. But that is the end of our story.
Yeah, that is the end. That is the epilogue.
I'm crying indifferently.
Sure.
So
Jan.
I do want to ask something.
Something. Okay.
Why do you think the manager made his choice at the end to keep Wallace? Do you really think it was just through intrigue? Do you think he had a heart?
To be honest, I don't know, because there was no indication before this moment that he would ever actually show mercy. The only thing that happened was he was the stag, right?
Yeah.
Okay, because there was 2 times that Wallace saw a stag. One of them, I think, was still when he was in denial about the whole thing.
Yes.
And the second time, the stag was watching over Wallace and Hugo, but it was like the silhouette in the trees. I think that I want to believe that maybe he had a little soft spot for Hugo and for Wallace. Because I think it is a miracle that Wallace was able to change through his stay here, because even the manager mentions it. Like, oh, you were a douchebag.
Yeah.
Oh, but not anymore, huh? Because now you have a heart, ironically enough. So I think that maybe he did have a soft spot for him.
It's funny because, like I told you, I didn't like that Wallace lived. I did think he was going to die. But there was a part of me for a second, because the beyond was never really shown, I thought when he came back down, that was his beyond. Like, I thought everything he was experiencing was his heaven,
cute.
you know?
Oh, that's such a good way to look at it, because he was, like, there at the door.
So for a second, I thought, yeah, that's what happened. But then, you know, when they started to do the little things like they called the law firm that he worked at, the paralegal. It's like, oh yeah, that girl that Wallace took the scholarship away from at the very end before his death. Can you give it to her? Because Wallace said that.
Yeah, Wallace made an oopsie. He didn't mean it. He wants her to have it back.
That was when I was like...
Also, rehire the girl that was crying in the beginning. Rehire her, please.
But that's when I thought that he was going through his version of his beyond.
That's actually a really, like a really good way to put it. I think if they would have done that, it would have been really good.
I think I would have preferred that. But, you know, that's where I'm at.
That could also be the intention.
Yeah, true.
But I
feel sad.
That could have been the intention as well with what the author was trying to go for.
So I think we've reached the point. I'm sorry, can you hold my hands? I think we've reached the point where we guess how the other person felt about this story.
We're gonna keep guessing.
We're gonna keep guessing. Oh my god, you look so pretty today.
No, you look so pretty today.
No, like you look so pretty today.
The blue on your lips, stunning.
The everything in your everything.
All right, so do you want to guess first, or should I guess first?
I don't know at all how you feel about this story. Okay. I hope that you like it.
Oh.
Because I'm indifferent. I hope that you like it. But for some reason, I feel like you're leaning towards like a 2 or a 3. And the reason I feel like that is because I know that you don't like stories that go too deep into philosophy.
Yeah, true.
Okay, tell me what it is.
Wait, let me guess you first. I want to guess that... Well, you did cry a lot when you were reading this. I'm going to guess you're going to give it like a 4.5. Like a 4.7.
Okay.
I feel that it's high only because I think you really appreciated Wallace's development.
Okay. So what did you rate it?
You want me to go first?
I do.
No, I want you to go first.
Okay, I can go first.
Okay.
I love this story.
Okay.
I love it. It was a lie. I wasn't indifferent.
It was a lie.
And by the way, you were seeing me do the color coding. The pink and purple is every time I cry.
I fucking knew it. Yeah, because you had a lot of pinks, and I was like, are these moments that you loved? And you were like, no.
But
loved.
But I love this story. When that part where Wallace stayed alive happened, I was not happy. But when it reached the end, and when they were all getting ready to go to their next assignment, I felt like this is a really good, like, beginning of a story. Like, oh yeah, it's just a ragtag team of friends and lovers. Like, you know, like...
friends and lovers.
Just working together. And I love that so much. And there was one specific part that I wanted to mention that sold it for me. Like, I was like, this is going to be what I give. This is my rating because of this moment.
Aww.
And it was when Cameron was showing his memories to Wallace after they held hands and he was a husk. And everyone around Cameron in his memory was crying over Zach, but he didn't cry over Zach, even though that was his boyfriend and the love of his life. And he tried so hard to cry, and he would, like, will himself, like, you need to cry, but never experience the grief like everyone else expected him to experience it. And that made me really sad.
Yeah.
That made me really sad because I've had to deal with the death of a family member. And I feel like you were living with me right after that happened.
Afterwards, yeah. Like, right after it happened.
And I feel like that was me for a very long time until I got my first job somewhere, and it kind of spiraled my freaking mourning process. Or, you know.
You were just really, really busy.
Yeah, until I wasn't. So that spoke to me a lot. And just the beauty of like friendship and loved ones that is portrayed in the story after grief was so good that I think this story will be rated a 5 out of 5. And I would consider this, and I know it's February, one of my contenders for like my best reads of 2022.
It's only Feb.
And it's only Feb.
Really?
Yeah.
I knew you would love it, but I don't think you love it that much.
I love it. I love it so much. I'm probably going to reread it this week because it means so much to me.
But it's so sad.
But the thing is, like, after you deal with the death of a loved one, death doesn't feel too sad anymore. Not for everyone. But to me, personally, it doesn't feel so sad anymore. It's sort of comforting knowing how they portrayed it in this story. Because one thing that they did that I also appreciated is that they never mentioned what the beyond looked like.
Yeah, I agree.
They never mentioned it, but it was always seen through the eyes of the other person who was like, oh, my love, or I can't believe you're here. And it's comforting to know that even though we as a society do not know what is beyond death, you should feel comfort that there is peace for them, no matter what. So, yeah.
Or at least feel comfort that you're here in this moment.
Yeah. I gave it a 5 out of 5. God, 2 5 out of 5s? This bold grade.
What do you mean?
Remember Hating Game? I gave it a 5 out of 5.
I keep forgetting. Both so different from each other.
No, they have one similar thing. They're both good. Okay. So, what about you? What's your rating? You gotta explain it though.
Yeah, of course. So, okay. You were reading this story today.
Yes.
I had already read it like 2 days ago or something. God damn. There were so many moments where I literally started bawling my eyes out. The first moment, I didn't know it was an LGBTQIA plus book. I didn't know. So the first time that there was an indication that something was happening, I don't remember what it was, but I think Wallace says something to Hugo. And Hugo almost like wants to tell him. And Wallace is like, nope, I'm gonna go. I started crying so hard because I just started thinking, oh my God, he can't tell him, because either way he's gonna have to go. Yeah. And I just started like getting so emotional with the idea of like, oh, now he's falling in love and he's getting everything he could have had if he were alive, but he's gone. So I was just really sad, and I do agree with you that the ending could have been a little bit better. And it's true, I don't really like philosophical books. I don't like books that try to delve into life and death in a realistic way. I can handle it in fantasy, I can handle it in different forms, but when it's like really realistic, it's just, I can't do it. It's too much for me. Does it
make you uncomfortable, or do you just not like the idea of it?
It starts giving me existential crises. I'm just like, God damn. I don't
not
know.
This Tuesday.
Not today. Not on the Lord's day. It makes me really sad. And the same thing happened with Midnight Library. I just started like, fuck with me. Like, oh my God, what does it mean to live? That's a great question. But I did really love the book. I actually highlighted a lot in this story. And I know you did not notice, because I went into the living room and you were in the kitchen and you were like crying your eyes out. And I was rereading some parts because I wanted to make sure that, oh, did this actually happen? Or, you know. So I was highlighting things, and I was also crying in the living room, but I was like, no, keep it together. Keep it together. I think that, I don't know what I would rate it, to be honest.
Wait, can I ask a question before you come up with your rating? Did you cry as much as I did? Which, it was a lot, but not that much. Do you think you cried? Okay, not that much. Okay. Did you cry as much as I did?
Yeah.
I feel like we cried at similar parts.
I was bawling my eyes out when they were trying to hold him down. I was so sad in that part because they were all trying to grab him, and he was trying to sacrifice himself, I guess, in a way. And May was like, no, like, it's not your time. Like, you can't leave us. And it was just really sad. Yeah. But even though I really did love the story, I don't think I would reread it, though, because it just makes me too sad. I think I would reread parts of it. Okay. So I don't know what I would give it.
Just know that I won't judge you, but I'll judge you.
You're going to judge me? Honestly, I think we've talked about this before with Banana Fish. Yeah. Actually, I don't even know if it was in the episode, the second filming. Okay, so when you and I talked about Banana Fish, we said that you don't have to love every part of the story to know that it's a good story. Yes. So I think this story is amazing, and I would also give it a 5 out of 5.
Really? Oh my God! We did it!
Okay, Dora. Yeah, because we lost it in one of the episodes. Not gonna say which.
All of them. We did, but we're back. Oh my God. Bestie vibes.
But who knows about the next one?
Okay, that's fine with me. As long as this one.
I'm sorry, I'm so cold. Sorry.
No.
I don't know. But I really did love this story. And it made me so emotional. And I think I would definitely recommend it. I'm curious to know if he's gonna make a sequel.
I don't know, but he does have a book coming out about LGBTQ superheroes. Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm excited.
But I think we're done.
We reached the end.
So I just want to thank everyone who is listening to us through audio form, whether that be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, anywhere you get your podcasts on. We really appreciate it. If you want to leave a rating and a review, that would mean so much. Also, tell all of your friends about us, because the best way to get known is through word of mouth. Yeah. If you watch us on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, comment about your favorite parts. Let us know if you feel the same way about this intense topic that was in this book. Yeah. And please hit the notification bell, because that helps with analytics. So we've reached the end of our episode. At the end of every episode, we like to roll a die. And if it lands on an even number, we're going to read a positive review. But if it lands on an odd number, we're going to read a negative review. And these reviews are on Goodread. We do not connect with any of these reviews. So whatever it says, That's what it is. And we are not going to make a comment. We're just going to end the episode.
We're going to leave it in the air.
Nice. So let's go ahead and roll.
Oh.
11. Odd. So bad review.
Okay, so time to find a negative review. All right, so this comes from Goodreads. It's written by Luis, and they write, "The story had a strong start, but it quickly went downhill. To be honest, I almost stopped reading midway because I was bored. The whole way station after we die situation didn't work for me. I didn't like the Midnight Library either, so that may also tell you something. I didn't buy how quickly the main character Wallace went from being really nasty, uncaring, to being such a sweetie. I did like the character of Nelson, but Hugo was a big zero for me. His personality never came through."
Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you next time.
Bye!
Oh my gosh, we've been here forever.
This is probably like the longest episode we've ever done.
For like a one-off, not a series. I'm gonna go grab a beer.
Oh my god, get me one too, but please make sure that it's convenient. Thank you.
It's gonna be Sunday.